I always thought betrayal had a scent, bitter, sharp like burnt toast or stale roses. But that morning as I stood in my lace wedding dress, I smelled nothing. No warning. No fire. Just lavender oil dabbed on my wrists, my mother's perfume in the air, and the thick silence of the dressing room where I waited. I was marrying Nathan Calloway. Or so I believed. We'd been together 4 years, living together for 3. Our relationship wasn't perfect, but I thought it was real. We worked hard for it, especially after the emotional mess he was left in after breaking up with his high school sweetheart, Madison Carter. She cheated on him, slept with his best friend, ruined their 5-year history and vanished. He told me I saved him. That I picked him up piece by piece and helped him remember how to breathe again. Maybe I did. But no one ever told me that men like Nathan never truly let go of the women who broke them. They either chase them forever or make every woman after pay for it. Turns out I was both. The morning of our wedding started calmly. My bridesmaids were buzzing around me, fixing curls, adjusting my veil. I kept looking at the time. He wasn't answering his phone, but it didn't seem odd. Grooms get nervous. Maybe he just needed air. That was my first mistake. Assuming silence was normal. I stood outside the doors of St. Matthew's Cathedral, my hand gripping my bouquet like a lifeline. The music started. The crowd rose. I waited for the signal to walk. But instead, my sister came rushing from the other side of the church, white-faced, phone in hand. Her lips trembled as she handed me the screen. It was a message from Nathan. Just 6 words. "I'm sorry. I can't do this." First I laughed. A short, dry, disbelieving sound. "No," I said. "That's not real. He's already here, isn't he?" But he wasn't. My world tilted on its axis as my sister wrapped her arms around me. My knees gave out and everything became blurry. And yet what I remember most is the silence. There was no screaming. No shouting. Just quiet gasps and the rustling of hundreds of guests sitting back down, whispering, turning their heads toward the altar, where no one stood. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Instead I walked down the aisle alone. Not in defiance. Not to prove anything. I just needed to look. I needed to see the empty space where he should have been, where our future should have begun. The priest stood there awkwardly. My father tried to stop me, but I brushed past him. When I reached the altar, I placed my bouquet down on the step, took off my veil and set it beside it. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't crack. I turned to the guests, all staring, and said, "Thank you for coming. There will still be dinner. You deserve that much." Then I walked away. By the time I got back to the bridal suite, my phone was exploding. Messages. Missed calls. And one image sent from an unknown number. A blurry photo of Nathan, in a hotel lobby, holding Madison's hand. The caption beneath it, "Guess who came back last night?" I stared at the photo until my eyes blurred. 4 years. That's how long I spent helping him recover from the woman who tore his life apart. I held him during panic attacks. I paid rent when he couldn't find a job. I even waited patiently while he deleted pictures of her at his own pace. Months after we moved in. He once told me he hated her. Now he had left me at the altar to run back to her. The world blurred into a gray fog that week. I didn't eat. I barely spoke. The house we shared, our apartment filled with memories of Sunday pancakes and Netflix marathons, felt like a tomb. Everyone called. Friends. Family. Even Nathan's sister, who told me she was disgusted by him. But I said nothing. I just packed. One night around 2 a.m. I walked into our bedroom and stared at the empty side of the bed. There was an old hoodie of his in the corner, crumpled and forgotten. I picked it up. And I burned it in the sink. That was the first time I smiled in days. A small, cold smile. That's when I knew I wasn't broken. I was angry. And anger, if you feed it just right, becomes something far more powerful. 3 weeks later, I walked into my office like nothing had happened. I was an executive assistant at Whitestone Interiors, a boutique luxury firm in the city. I had worked my way up from intern to EA to one of the senior designers, Calvin West. Calvin was a strange man, brilliant, unpredictable, demanding. He had no patience for emotion, but he had a deep respect for competence. He noticed me as soon as I returned. "You look different," he said, squinting over his espresso. "New lipstick," I replied without missing a beat. He stared for a moment longer, then nodded. "Good. Keep it." In truth, I did look different. The heartbreak had hollowed me out, reshaped me. I wore heels every day now. Sharper clothes. Darker lipstick. I worked late. I skipped lunch. I didn't talk about Nathan, not once. But I was watching. Madison had posted on Instagram a photo of her and Nathan in Venice. Back where it all started, she captioned it. And then someone tagged me. A cruel, passive-aggressive gesture. I didn't reply. I screenshotted it instead. I wasn't done with them. Not yet. Months passed. Calvin grew more dependent on me. I took over bigger responsibilities, client portfolios, investor relations, even strategy meetings. "You're wasted as an assistant," he told me one evening after a pitch that landed us a high-profile billionaire client. "Come to dinner." I hesitated. "Dinner? Strictly business," he said, then paused. "Unless you'd prefer otherwise." I agreed. We had dinner at a quiet rooftop bistro. The conversation was about work, until it wasn't. "You ever been married?" he asked. "No," I replied. "Not quite." He didn't ask further. And I appreciated that. But I knew what I was doing. He wasn't the type to fall easily. But he respected control. Silence. Focus. And now I had all three. 6 months after the wedding that wasn't, I found out Nathan was back in town. Through a friend, I learned they were engaged. Madison had posted the ring on her profile. Same finger. Different man. I laughed when I saw it. He took him back. And she thought she won. But she didn't know me. Not anymore. Because I was no longer the girl waiting at the altar. I was becoming the woman who was going to bury them. One step at a time. The hardest part isn't being left. It's waking up the next morning and realizing the world still expects you to keep functioning. That your alarm still rings. That your job still needs you. That the sun still rises. Even when your world has shattered into so many sharp pieces you can barely breathe without cutting yourself on the memory of what was supposed to be. But I woke up. And I did function. Because I wasn't going to let Nathan Calloway be the beginning and end of my story. I wasn't going to be the girl who was left. The pity. The whispered about ex-fiancé. I was going to be the last woman he ever underestimated. I didn't cry after that morning. Not even once. I didn't burn photos or scream into a pillow or eat ice cream in bed. No. I studied. I studied him. And I learned things. The first thing I did was retrieve an old iPad we used to share when we lived together. I had forgotten it was even there, stuffed into the back of my closet, half dead and dust-covered. I charged it. Opened it. He never logged out of his email. His cloud storage. His apps. Passwords. The same ones he always used, his first dog's name and a few numbers. I used to tease him for being predictable. Now I was grateful for it. What I found wasn't shocking, but it still hurt. Screenshots of messages. Emails from Madison that started long before he ever broke up with me. Long before he even proposed. He'd been testing the waters with her for over a year. Telling her how miserable he was. How things weren't the same. How he couldn't forget their memories. How she was the only person who ever really saw him. That one stuck in my throat. As I had seen him. In his worst moments. In the silence of his failures. In the space between his self-doubt and shame. But she broke him. And he still chose her. Well, he deserved worse than heartbreak. He deserved reflection. He deserved to see everything he built crumble with the same silence he left me in. So I saved everything. I created a folder. For later. I encrypted it. I backed it up. Evidence wasn't the weapon I was going to use first, but it would come. For now I just needed power. And I found it ironically in the man I once feared, Calvin West. He was my boss. The kind of man who didn't ask twice. Brilliant, intimidating, and emotionally detached. But he wasn't cruel. He respected efficiency. He respected skill. And he started looking at me differently after I came back from the altar. I hadn't expected to go back to work so soon, but I needed structure. Something to pull me forward. Something to keep me from drifting into numbness. Calvin noticed. "You've changed," he said to me one day during a client meeting as I calmly shot down $1 million pitch from a real estate tycoon without blinking. "Trauma does that," I replied, not looking up from my notes. His mouth curled into something resembling a smirk. "Keep going," he said. "I think I like this version better." What he meant was he liked that I no longer hesitated. I didn't explain myself. I didn't flinch. I worked late hours. I memorized our client books. I restructured entire pitch decks. And when he asked me for input, I gave it without apology. And when we started attending more meetings together, his tone shifted. "You're not just my assistant anymore," he told me during a flight to Los Angeles. "You're the reason the firm's running as smoothly as it is. I want you to start taking more lead." So I did. And when I posted a picture from that flight, just my hand holding a champagne flute in the corner of a first-class cabin seat, guess who watched my stories? Madison. 3 times. I smiled. Nathan and Madison were now public. Their engagement was splashed across social media with curated, overly lit photos of Venice and vague captions about second chances and real love. I watched it unfold like a slow-motion car crash. He used the same words in his post that he once wrote in the vows he'd never gotten to read to me. That was the tipping point. That night I opened up the files again. I highlighted the receipts, the overlap in dates, the cash transactions between accounts I once helped him set up when he was broke. And I began tracing connections. Nathan's startup was small but ambitious. It relied heavily on crowdfunding and investors from his former tech colleagues. I remembered one specifically, a guy named Travis who once cornered me at a Christmas party and said Nathan better be worth the investment. I found Travis on LinkedIn. Then I found his email. And I sent him a question. Just one. "Were you aware that Madison Carter was still romantically involved with Nathan Calloway at the time he was fundraising with you?" I signed it, Anonymous. And I attached a few screen recordings. It took less than 72 hours for the ripples to begin. Nathan posted something vague on Instagram about people trying to destroy dreams. Travis deleted all his likes on Nathan's page. Madison interestingly went silent. I didn't move. I didn't strike again. I just waited. Because a little suspicion does more damage than a loud accusation. Let people wonder. Let him try to explain. Let her start asking him questions she didn't think she needed to ask. Meanwhile, Calvin and I grew closer. It wasn't romantic at first. But it was intense. He trusted me. Brought me into confidential meetings. Let me see the soft spots in the business, the weak points. And over time our conversations slipped into late-night dinners, not just post-work drinks. "You're not like other people," he said once as we sat in his apartment, overlooking the skyline. "You've got this stillness in you. But it's not calm. It's lethal." That made me pause. "What makes you think I'm lethal?" I asked. He smiled into his glass. "Because you know how to wait." And he was right. I wasn't rushing. I didn't want to just hurt Nathan and Madison. I wanted them to ruin themselves trying to keep up. And to do that I had to rise. Fully. Quietly. Beyond what they could ignore. And Calvin? He was part of that. The first time I met Madison in public again was 6 months after the wedding that wasn't. It was at a gallery opening in Manhattan. She was standing near a painting, wearing a red jumpsuit and holding a glass of wine. Nathan wasn't with her. She saw me before I saw her. She walked over. "You look different," she said, scanning me up and down. "Success tends to change people," I replied coolly. "I heard you're engaged now," she said, her eyes gleaming with fake sweetness. "To your boss." I smiled. "To a man who doesn't run when things get difficult." Her lips thinned. She turned slightly and muttered, "You really think this makes us even?" That made me laugh. Really laugh. "Even." I repeated. "You think this is about you?" Her brows lifted slightly in confusion. I leaned in. "Oh, sweetheart. You're not the main character. You're just the shadow he keeps returning to." Her eyes burned with fury as I stepped back and walked away. And that was the first moment I saw it. She wasn't as secure as she pretended to be. Because Nathan hadn't changed. And deep down she knew he would leave her again too. Later that night I got a text from an unknown number. "You think you're better than me?" It was Madison. I didn't respond. I just screenshotted it and filed it into the folder. The folder labeled "The Collapse." Because when they fell and they would, I wasn't going to scream. I was going to show them everything they left behind. Everything they didn't see coming. And I would do it without raising my voice. Just like the day he left me at the altar. There's something theatrical about betrayal when it's public. When it's no longer whispered in dark corners but lit up for an audience. Edited, curated, and posted under captions like "meant to be." Nathan and Madison didn't just want to move on. They wanted to rewrite the story. They wanted me to be the mistake. They posted engagement photos 2 weeks after I saw her at the gallery. Shot in black and white with soft lighting and captions like, "Sometimes the heart leads you back to where it always belonged." I recognized the dress Madison wore. She bought it with Nathan's card on the same weekend we were supposed to be honeymooning in Santorini. They had no shame. They also had no idea what was coming. Because while they were staging photo shoots, I was watching, waiting, building. I had everything I needed, receipts, screenshots, time-stamped lies, but I wasn't going to throw it all out in a tantrum. That's what they expected. That's how people like them win. They play public. I play precision. So when I saw the headline that Madison was launching a brand, a lifestyle blog paired with a boutique PR firm, I smiled. She called it Golden State Grace. The tagline was insufferable. For women who rise after being broken. The irony nearly made me choke. And yet I let it breathe. I let her believe it would succeed. I even followed the page anonymously. She posted advice columns, hosted Q&As, ran little courses on reputation rehab. And then quietly I submitted a tip to one of her sponsors, an organic skincare brand she'd just signed with. The tip included a Dropbox link. In it, time-stamped screenshots of Madison laughing at the brand and old messages to Nathan. "This brand is such a scam. I could design better packaging in my sleep." That was just one. There were more. Emails where she bragged about using feminist buzzwords to draw in sponsors. Conversations where she rolled her eyes about her audience, calling them desperate divorcees with credit cards. The brand dropped her within 48 hours. She posted a vague Instagram story the next day. "Some people will try to dim your light. Keep shining anyway." I didn't dim it. I just showed them the bulb was already burnt out. Calvin noticed my mood shift. He always did. "You seem satisfied," he said during a dinner meeting. We were finalizing a partnership with a luxury hotel chain that used to work with Nathan's company. "They chose us," I replied simply. He leaned back in his chair, swirling his wine. "Do I want to know what else you've been doing?" I looked him in the eye. "You already know I'm not harmless." He smiled. "That's what makes you irresistible." By now we were publicly engaged. The media called it unexpected. Some called it inappropriate. Former assistant turned fiancé? I let them talk. Because the louder they got, the quieter I became. Silence unnerves people more than rage ever could. A few days later, Calvin received an invitation. It was for a networking gala hosted by a major venture firm. Guess who was on the board? Travis. The same man I anonymously tipped off months ago about Nathan's financial cover-ups. "Should I RSVP yes?" Calvin asked. I nodded. "Absolutely." We arrived at the event dressed to kill. I wore emerald green silk. Hair slicked into a bun. No necklace, just the ring Calvin gave me, gleaming like a promise and a warning. Nathan and Madison were there. She spotted me first. Her hand tightened around her champagne flute as I walked past, my fingers lightly brushing Calvin's arm. Nathan looked paler than I remembered. He hadn't aged well. His once confident eyes were now restless. Good. I wanted him to feel it. That sinking, tightening, choking realization that he didn't just lose me. He lost everything I brought with me. At the gala, Travis approached Calvin and pulled him aside. I lingered close enough to hear. "That girl of yours," Travis said. "She's sharp. I underestimated her." Calvin glanced back at me. "That makes two of us." Later that night, Nathan tried to corner me near the bathrooms. "Can we talk?" he asked. "No," I replied without hesitation. "You can't just act like we didn't." I turned to face him. "Come, Pug. You're right," I said. "We did have something. And then you let it rot." He blinked. "You don't have to punish me forever, you know." I stepped closer, my voice barely above a whisper. "Who said this is about punishment?" His breath caught. I left him standing there holding nothing. Just like he once left me. The next phase came sooner than expected. Madison launched a podcast. Episode 1 was titled, "When They Try to Steal Your Crown." Halfway through, she veiled insults that weren't even clever. She used to work for him, she said with a laugh. Now she wants to be him. It was directed at me. The comments were full of support. Her audience didn't know any better. But sponsors watch everything. And one of them, an audiobook platform, received an anonymous package a week later. Inside, audio clips from a Zoom call Madison forgot to delete from her cloud. A private meeting with her assistant, where she referred to her listeners as dumb sheep who'll buy anything I slap a logo on. Her contract was cancelled. Publicly. Her podcast was pulled from 3 platforms within a week. And she responded exactly the way I expected. She went live. Crying. Trembling. Saying she was being attacked by jealous women and backstabbed by people pretending to empower others. The comment section turned. Some defended her. Most didn't. Because crocodile tears only work when the pond hasn't dried up. And I had drained hers months ago. Nathan meanwhile was spiraling. His startup's latest funding round fell through. I knew it would. Because one of the angel investors, a woman Calvin had mentored years ago. When she asked him why I was listed as a stakeholder on our new venture, he told her the truth. She's the reason we're profitable. She trusted Calvin. So she trusted me. Nathan's proposal was declined. And the silence that followed? Louder than any scandal. But the moment I knew I had them, really had them, was when I received a message from Madison. No threats. No insults. Just desperation. Can we talk? Just us. I waited a day before replying. Of course. Tomorrow. Noon. Café Rue. She arrived early. I arrived later. She stood when I approached, her hands fidgeting with her phone. I don't know what you want, she said immediately. Sure you do, I replied, sitting across from her. Her eyes narrowed. You've humiliated me. You've destroyed everything I've worked for. No, I corrected softly. You did that. I just let people see it. She went quiet. Then almost pleading, why? Why go this far? I sipped my coffee. Because you weren't supposed to win. That's not justice, she said. No, I agreed. It's not. It's balance. Then I slid a folder across the table. She didn't touch it. It's everything Nathan's been hiding from you, I said. Financial inconsistencies. Old emails. Conversations with a girl named Emily. You can read them or not. But if I were you, I'd open it before your wedding. Madison's face crumbled. What do you want from me? She whispered. I smiled faintly. Nothing. I just wanted to see if you'd still say yes after the truth. I stood, walked away, and never looked back. There's a special kind of silence that follows a woman who wins without announcing it. It trails behind her in rooms where she used to be ignored. It unsettles people who once dismissed her. It echoes, because everyone knows something shifted but they can't quite name it. I didn't need to raise my voice anymore. My life was speaking for me. After the cafe meeting with Madison, I expected her to deny everything. To twist, deflect, spin it all like she always did. Instead, she vanished. For 3 weeks she went offline. No posts. No stories. Her empowerment blog went inactive. Her podcast discontinued. And Nathan? He was busy holding his startup together with duct tape and delusion. His team was shrinking. His funding was frozen. His PR was scattered. But me? I was rising. Calvin and I finalized the deal with the Carrington Group, a real estate titan whose luxury towers Nathan once dreamed of pitching to. Now those towers bore our designs, our branding, our signature textures in glass. When the press covered it, they called me Whitestone's secret weapon. And suddenly I wasn't just Calvin's fiancée. I was his partner. Co-owner. Co-visionary. That kind of power, it changes you. Not in the way people fear, cold, corrupt, arrogant. Refines you. It teaches you what to speak, and what's better left to be seen. The wedding was Calvin's idea. He didn't want to wait. You rebuilt yourself from ashes, he said one night, wrapping an arm around me on the balcony. Let's celebrate that. Let's give the world something worth watching. We planned it in 6 weeks. No fairy tale fantasies. No Pinterest boards. Just elegance. Poise. Precision. Everything my first wedding day wasn't. It was set for the last Saturday of October. A private villa on the coast. Champagne marble floors. Deep emerald flowers. Gold-lined menus. No sprawling guest list. Just those who mattered, those who had watched my evolution and respected the silence I carried it in. Calvin offered to keep the press out. I said no. Let them see. Let the same blogs that once featured Nathan and Madison's reunion story now showcase the woman who was left, wearing couture, standing beneath chandeliers, saying yes to a man who never once made her feel small. The night before the wedding, I received a message. From Madison. You won. I get it. Good luck tomorrow. I stared at it for a while. Typed nothing. Then I checked the RSVP list. Her name wasn't on it, of course. But Nathan's college roommate it was. And I knew Eli talked. That's how I knew Madison would come. Not as a guest. As a shadow. She would watch from a corner, pretending to blend in, pretending she didn't care. That was her pattern. Never directly involved, always circling the center, trying to find a crack. But there would be no cracks here. Not anymore. The morning of the wedding was quiet. I woke early. Walked alone along the terrace. Listened to the sea. No anxiety. No fear. Just a calm so deep it felt like steel beneath my skin. The hairstylist asked if I wanted anything dramatic. I said no. Just sleek. Just sharp. Just undeniable. The dress wasn't white. It was ivory silk with sleeves that fell like smoke and a train that trailed behind me like a legacy. The neckline was sculpted. The back dipped low. I looked like power dressed in patience. And when Calvin saw me, he didn't cry. He bowed his head slightly, almost reverently. You're lethal, he whispered. I kissed him before the ceremony even began. The crowd wasn't large. But it included every person I'd ever needed to prove wrong. Former colleagues who once talked over me. Industry heads who called me just an assistant. Socialites who pretended I was invisible when I dated Nathan. And in the back, half shielded by tall arrangements of eucalyptus and rose gold chairs, stood Madison. She wore beige. No makeup. No smile. She looked like someone attending a funeral. Maybe she was. The funeral of the illusion she built. The death of the fantasy where she won. As the music played and I walked down the aisle, not trembling, not smiling, just standing in my full self, I didn't look at her. I looked ahead. At the man who didn't leave. At the life I designed with bloody hands and a steel will. The vows were short. Calvin never liked theatrics. I don't promise you perfection, he said. I promise you presence. Power. Peace. And when it was my turn, I said only. I built myself back without asking anyone to save me. You never asked me to shrink. So I'll stand beside you, fully formed, never fading. When we kissed, I heard a chair scrape in the back. I didn't need to look to know it was her. Leaving. Alone. The reception was golden hour stretched into candlelight. No dancing. Just jazz, laughter, and glasses clinking with expensive wine. A few press photographers lingered discreetly. They'd already gotten their shots. My ring, my dress, the kiss, the venue. The next morning, the article hit every major page. From abandoned bride to empire queen. Inside the wedding of Calvin West and his co-fiancée. And beneath it, a subheading that made me pause. Guests included top industry leaders. While a certain ex-girlfriend was spotted quietly exiting mid-ceremony. They didn't name her. They didn't have to. Everyone knew. Nathan sent me an email that night. It was short. No subject line. I saw the pictures. Happy. Like someone I don't know anymore. I read it in silence. Then deleted it. Because he was right. He didn't know me anymore. He never really did. But the most satisfying moment didn't come at the wedding. It came the week after. When Madison posted a photo of herself standing in front of a white wall, holding a sign that read, "Resetting. Taking time off social. See you when I'm ready." The comments were sparse. Some supportive. Most indifferent. She wasn't the woman people believed in anymore. The curtain had dropped. The spotlight had shifted. And I didn't even have to say her name once. People still ask me if I ever truly forgave Nathan. I never hated him. He wasn't worth the weight of hate. But I never forgot. And forgetting is what makes people foolish. I remembered every look. Every lie. Every time he held me while planning a life with someone else. And that memory. It sculpted the woman who walked down the aisle a second time. This time not to prove my worth to a man. But to celebrate that I never needed his approval in the first place. There's a difference between losing something and realizing you'll never have it again. Nathan had finally arrived at that realization. It wasn't his text. It wasn't a voicemail. It was his presence. A flesh and blood surrender standing in the lobby of my building. The same man who once called me a temporary placeholder had come back, hollow-eyed, regretful, and unsure if he should even approach. He lingered near the reception desk, pretending to check his phone. But I knew that stance. I had watched him do the same thing when we were together, before difficult conversations, when he wasn't sure if he had the right to speak. Only this time he didn't. I walked past him the way people pass ghosts in old houses. With a shiver but no acknowledgement. He followed. "Hey," he said, catching up to me by the elevators. "Please, can we talk?" I didn't answer. The elevator dinged. I stepped in. So did he. "I'm not here to fight," he added quickly. I've been meaning to say something. For a long time. I stared straight ahead, eyes on the panel. "You left me on our wedding day," I said. "There's no sentence you can form now that will feel necessary." Nathan swallowed hard. I know that. But I need you to know, I didn't leave because you weren't good enough. That made me turn. You left because you thought Madison was better," I corrected. "Don't soften it now. It's insulting." His shoulders dropped. The elevator door opened at my floor. I stepped out. He followed. "Natalie, please. Don't say my name like you still have access to it," I snapped. That stopped him. He opened his mouth but no words came. I walked to the glass doors of the office suite Calvin and I now co-owned. My name was etched beside his. Nathan stared at it. He looked like he wanted to say something clever. Something proud, maybe, like he'd always known I had it in me. But pride is cheap when it's handed out late. And his was past due. He didn't return after that. But others did. I started getting whispers, industry murmurs, private messages, casual mentions at events, that Nathan was struggling. His new firm had folded. Investors pulled out. Madison's name was nowhere near his anymore. Then the email came. From Carrington Development. Subject: bidding update, second-tier proposals. Nathan had applied to a new commercial project. A much smaller one. He didn't know I sat on the advisory panel for the brand's interior design division. Didn't know that the specs he submitted would land on my desk first. I reviewed them in silence. They weren't bad. But they weren't exceptional. Mediocre, rushed, uninspired. And then came the kicker. His proposal included a software tool I had introduced to him years ago. One I had helped build out while he was first starting his business. He didn't even credit it properly. I didn't reject the proposal. I didn't need to. I simply attached a note. Design concept lacks originality and alignment with brand narrative. Consider re-evaluating core team strategy. That was enough. Carrington passed him over. One evening weeks later I was leaving a gallery event when I saw him again. Outside by the valet stand. He was wearing a coat too thin for the weather. A mistake Nathan wouldn't have made 2 years ago. "You know, I didn't think it would end like this," he said as I walked past. I paused. Turned. "You thought it would end with me small," I said. "Quiet. Grieving. I thought she would fight for us," he admitted. "But Madison only knows how to chase things that don't chase back." That made me laugh. Not out of humor, out of pure bitter disbelief. "You burned me to chase the fire that scorched you first," I said. "And you thought you wouldn't get burned again." Nathan stepped closer. "You were always the right choice. I just realized too late." "You didn't realize anything," I said, my voice low and steady. "Life just stopped protecting you from your own mistakes." The valet brought my car around. I opened the door, then paused. "You know what the difference is between you and me, Nathan?" He looked up. "I built a life," I said. "You ran into a fantasy." And then I left him there. With his hands in his coat pockets and that look in his eyes that said, "What have I done?" Back at the penthouse, Calvin was waiting on the balcony. The city glowed below us, but he wasn't looking at it. His gaze was fixed on me. "He's trying to come back, isn't he?" he asked. "Yes," I replied. "And he's too late." Calvin didn't smile. He wasn't smug. That's what I respected about him. He never treated my past like something to compete with. Just something to protect me from. "He doesn't know you anymore," he said. "He never did," I replied. A week later, Madison resurfaced. I didn't see her, just her brand. She attempted a rebrand of her failed platform. New logo. New mission. A tagline stolen from one of my interviews with Vogue Business. "Power isn't loud. It's lived." I filed a soft cease and desist letter. She took it down quietly. But I knew what was coming next. And I was ready. Nathan tried one last time. He sent me a package. No note, just a box. Inside, I found the necklace I had once picked out for myself when we were engaged. He'd never bought it. Said it was too expensive for the moment. Now here it was. Too expensive, too late. I left it on my desk until evening. Then calmly I dropped it in the donation bin outside my building. Because I wasn't the woman who wanted that necklace anymore. I wasn't the girl waiting for him to step up. I was the woman standing at the top of everything he once told me I'd never reach. And now I owned the sky above him. Nathan didn't realize he was sinking. Not at first. Like most men who confuse charm with vision, he believed a downfall would come loud. Legal notices, locked doors, boardroom drama. He didn't expect it to start with silence. And that's how I planned it. Not with fire. With frost. After Carrington rejected his proposal, Nathan pivoted, desperately. He launched a second firm under a different name, Callaway Creative. Original. He started sending cold emails to mid-tier developers, slashing prices, offering his services at cost just to stay in the game. I watched. I tracked. I didn't interfere, yet. He posted on LinkedIn trying to seem busy. Phrases like in transition, new beginnings, and collaborative direction littered his updates. But clients weren't responding. Because in the world he once ruled, I had already taken the throne. The first crack came from within his own walls. An ex-employee, someone he had fired abruptly after a presentation years ago, reached out to me anonymously. "I've been watching him crash," she wrote. "And I remembered what he did to you. If you're interested, I still have access to some of his early licensing documents. Thought you should know. He's using your original pitch deck as a framework for his current projects." She sent me the files. It was mine. Slightly altered. Renamed. But the structure? The design flow? Even the phrasing? Word for word. And now that counted as intellectual theft. I didn't go straight to court. That would have been too obvious. Too fast. I took the quiet route. I had our legal team file a formal cease and desist first, citing copyright infringement. Then we sent a digital takedown request to every platform his mock-ups lived on. Within 48 hours his website was offline. 2 weeks later, PayPal froze his business account due to ongoing investigation of IP theft. Clients pulled out. One of them, the boutique hotel he begged to take him on, sent a public statement ending all association. No one defended him. Because the man he once was, the golden boy with charisma, was long gone. And the man that remained was just another liar with pretty words and no results. He emailed me. Subject line, "Please. Talk to me." I didn't open it. Madison tried a quieter approach. I got a message from a blocked account on Instagram. "I'm not asking for sympathy. But you've won. Whatever this was, it's over. We're both tired. Please let it go." Funny how people remember fatigue only when the mirror cracks. She didn't look tired when she stood beside him the day I was supposed to say, "I do." Now she wanted grace? I gave her nothing. No reply. Silence again. Because silence makes people question themselves. It forces them to spiral. Then came the final blow. Nathan was working on a partnership with a mid-level real estate brand called Scylla and Green. It was his last chance at reviving his reputation, his final comeback. What he didn't know. They were one of our sister partners. Whitestone Interiors had helped design their first flagship model 5 years ago. We still had ties. And I still had leverage. When I met with their director, I didn't warn her. I didn't mention Nathan by name. I simply said, "If you're looking for a future, don't build it on the bones of a man who burns every woman he touches." He understood. 2 days later, Nathan's proposal was declined. The investor he had lined up? Well, his pitch event. Cancelled. And finally, the one thread he clung to, his name, began to sour. Callaway Creative trended on a subreddit for failed founders. The comments were brutal. Took all the credit, blamed all the losses. He tried to pitch us a copy-paste deck. Avoid this man if you value your time. No one defended him. Not even Madison. Especially not Madison. One morning a package arrived at our office. No label. No note. Inside, an award plaque Nathan had once won back when we were still together. Design Innovation, 2020. It was cracked. On the back someone had scrawled in marker, "You can have it. I don't want to remember anymore." I smiled. Not out of spite, but because I recognized the handwriting. Madison had finally let go. Not of him, but of the illusion. Later that week I heard from a mutual acquaintance that Nathan had moved out of the city. He'd left behind the apartment we once shared. His parents were helping him. He was figuring things out. But there were no more headlines. No posts. No plans. Just a man, unmade by his own hands, trying to stitch together what little he hadn't burned. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel rage. I felt completion. Like a circle had closed. He burned me to impress a ghost from his past. And now I had burned the memory of his future, without fire, without fury. Just frost. Just control. Calvin and I hosted a charity gala that winter. Our company had just launched its 5th global location. We were expanding. Celebrated. Trusted. I walked into that room wearing silver. No ring. Just a nameplate necklace. White stone. It wasn't about marriage anymore. It was about legacy. Not his. Not anyone's. And when someone asked me casually about Nathan, I only said, "Who?" And I meant it. They don't talk about me the way they used to. Not as Nathan's ex. Not as the girl who got left. Now I'm a story they whisper. A name they drop with caution. Not out of love. Not even out of admiration. Out of fear. Because I didn't just survive the betrayal. I made it regret ever touching me. The winter after Nathan's quiet departure, the industry shifted. Whitestone, once known solely for Calvin's genius, became synonymous with mine. Publications started quoting me. My voice was used in keynote conferences. My taste became a trend report. I got invited to speak on rebuilding reputation, and the irony wasn't lost on me. Every time I stood at a podium with hundreds listening, I thought of that girl waiting at the altar. The one holding a bouquet like it was a shield. The one who didn't cry because her rage was too wide, too quiet, too permanent. That girl had no idea she'd one day own the rooms that once excluded her. Now she didn't just walk through the front door, she redesigned the whole building. Nathan never rebuilt his company. After his last failed pitch, the few who had once believed in his vision started pulling their distance in public too. His name became a footnote in LinkedIn conversations. Wasn't he the one who? I heard he applied for a corporate job in Denver. Not as CEO. Not as founder. As a mid-level branding consultant. The firm reached out to me for reference. They didn't know our history, just that he listed me as a former collaborator. I didn't lie. I sent them screenshots of the intellectual property theft. Court documentation. A summarized timeline. They didn't respond. But I checked his LinkedIn a week later. Seeking new opportunities. Still seeking. As for Madison, she tried one last stunt. She relaunched her podcast under a new name. A new image. Less feminist guru, more humble healer. The first episode was titled, Rewriting Rock Bottom. She talked about betrayal. Not hers. She didn't say my name, but she used terms like vindictive, performative, dangerously composed. She cried softly into the mic. Said she was bullied out of her own platforms by another woman's unresolved ego. Said some women rise not to inspire, but to remind others of how far they're willing to sink. It was a clever spin. Clever enough to fool people who didn't know the truth. But not everyone bought it. Not when my team responded, not publicly, not on social media, but with quiet, legal precision. A cease and desist arrived at her P.O. box within 48 hours. The podcast vanished within 72. She didn't fight it this time. Because deep down Madison knew, she no longer had the credibility to scream. She used to be the storm. Now she was the aftermath. That spring I was offered a feature in Architectural Digest. A personal profile. Not just about the firm but about me. The woman who rose from scandal. Who turned betrayal into a blueprint. They asked me one final question. If you could go back to that wedding day, what would you tell her? The version of you waiting at the altar. I paused. Thought carefully. Then said, you're not waiting for someone. You're standing in the way of your own empire. That line made the cover. People ask if I ever forgave him. Forgiveness is a concept people throw around like it's supposed to free you. But I never wanted freedom from what happened. I wanted ownership. I wanted the weight of the pain to belong to me because that meant it was mine to sculpt. Forgiveness didn't rebuild me. Rage did. Precision did. Stillness did. And once I rose, I didn't seek closure. I became it. The final thread came from a source I never expected. Nathan's mother. A handwritten letter. Old-fashioned. Delicate cursive. Scented paper. Natalie, I never wrote to say I was sorry. Maybe because I believed my son would come back to you eventually. Maybe because I thought he'd finally grow into the man you always saw in him. He didn't. He lost more than a fiancé. He lost his mirror. And now when people talk about power they speak your name. I wanted you to know, you were never the mistake. You were the lesson. For him. For her. For all of us. I folded it carefully. Placed it in the same drawer where I'd once left Nathan's final note. Not because it healed anything, but because it confirmed one truth. I wasn't the woman he left. I was the one they'd never recover from. Years passed. My name became legacy. We opened offices in London, Paris, Tokyo. I stopped attending every event. People began asking if I'd appear, not when. That's how you know the scales have flipped. You go from guest list to myth. One night at a gala in Los Angeles, a young intern approached me. She looked nervous, wide eyes, holding a portfolio like it was a secret. You probably don't remember me, she said, but you came to my university once. I was in the front row. I smiled. And now? I work at Whitestone's West Coast division, she said. You inspired me. Then quietly, can I ask you something? Of course. Is it true you were once left at the altar? I didn't flinch. Yes. She blinked, surprised by the honesty. And now you're here? I nodded. Because of that. She didn't ask anything else. She didn't need to. The silence between us was enough. My story doesn't end with a kiss. Or a ring. Or a headline. It ends like this. With me standing in the center of everything they once told me I'd never have. With the name I rebuilt etched in glass above offices on 3 continents. With my legacy being used as a blueprint for women who were once told they were too emotional, too much, too loud, too late. And when those women rise, they won't ask permission. They'll remember me. The girl who was left. The woman who returned without knocking. The storm that didn't make noise, but never left a single thing standing. The